Good morning. This is Bunny Stevens, the project coordinator for Digital Learning Services.
And good morning. This is Debbie Shergi, the director of Digital Learning Services. And we are so excited to have several of you joining us this morning for this pre-bidders virtual conference, where you will learn a ton about this particular invitation to bid and what our goals are, a little bit about who we are, and you'll just learn a lot about the logistics of how to bid and how to put your bid together and submit it. Bunny and I are both from Educational Service District 112, which is a service agency located in Vancouver, Washington, that not only serves the school districts in Southwest Washington, but we serve school districts in 12 states through this purchasing cooperative called the DigitalEdge. So we are bidding on behalf of eligible purchasers, which are K through 12 institutions, universities, public libraries, and the other eligible purchasers are listed in the invitation to bid. So that's a brief overview of our organization. We do want to tell you that this is a webinar format and there is limited interactivity in our webinar. You will need to make sure that you're using the pertinent audio method. Either you have selected in the audio panel that appears on the right of your screen, either to use your telephone or to use your mic and speakers. And hopefully you've got that all set up and ready to go. If you want more room on your screen, part of your control panel for this webinar includes an orange button that points to the right. And that button, if you click on it, it'll collapse the control panel, but it will not terminate your connection to the webinar. And so if you need access to the control panel again, then you just press that same button and your control panel will reappear. And then finally, as we enter into a question and answer phase, there will be part of your control panel that you'll need access to, and it's a control panel that has the banner called questions on it. And you expand that part of the panel by just clicking on the plus sign right here by the Q and questions, and it'll reveal the area for questions. The top part is the area where other people have submitted questions, and you might be able to see those, but you submit your question in the bottom portion of that part of the panel, and then press return to actually submit the questions. You can type up, you can type your question at any time, and it'll be waiting there for us when we actually enter into the question and answers portion of the webinar. We do hope that you have the invitation to bid in front of you, because we are going to be referring to several parts of it today. And when you type up your questions, please reference the page number and the paragraph or section number that you're referring to. And that'll help us get real specific in our responses as we answer the questions. So, Bunny, do you have anything to add to that?
No. The only thing I would like to interject that yes, we do keep track of who is attending this webinar, because it is a requirement in order to submit a bid.
That's right. So thank you for adding that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Bunny, I think the next portion is yours to do.
All right. During the virtual bidders conference today, we're offering this in order to emphasize important sections of the invitation to bid. This broadcast primarily focuses on the invitation to bid and not on the contract portion of the invitation to bid, because all the bid materials and submitting the bid is addressed in the invitation to bid, where the contract addresses the post-award information. We will be reviewing the bid forms. Debbie will cover that in depth later on in the broadcast and will help clarify how to submit your bid materials. We will also be answering questions and several different points within the broadcast. We will break for questions like Debbie referred to on the previous screen.
And Bunny, can I just add to that? While this particular webinar is about the invitation to bid and all of the bid activity, we really want to emphasize that it's very important to also be very, very familiar with what's in the contract portion, because there are some very unique requirements to this contract that once you enter into the bidding process and the contract, you'll want to make sure that you're ready to carry out those requirements. So please, in addition to becoming very familiar with the invitation to bid, have you and your bidding team also look at the contract portion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So as Debbie referred to, that is very important to review everything. And a comprehensive contract is to provide you with an overview of what our contract, the components of the contract include. The invitation to bid, which is part 1 of 2, includes all the language for the invitation to bid, as well as in the back, starting on page 25, the appendices A through F, which are also a critical part of the bid. The contract, which is part 2 of 2, and the single set of bid forms. All of these components are also on our website for you to download. But today in our meeting, we are going to be mainly addressing the invitation to bid and the single set of bid forms. But as Debbie referred to it, you need to be familiar with the contract and the post-award requirement language that's in there as well. I'm going to give you a moment. Hopefully you have your invitation to bid open. And I'm going to start with the timeline on page 4. In covering the timeline, there's key important dates to refer to. Today's meeting, of course, is June 9th. This Friday is the last day for bidders to ask questions and submit those on email. And all questions from this broadcast, as well as any other questions that have been submitted, will be answered, and those will be posted on the website for all to view. Monday, the 15th of June, is the last day for any addenda that we may possibly feel like we need to add for the invitation to bid. That's the last day that it will be posted, and again, that will be on the website for you to look at. And as directed in the invitation to bid, all signed pages for the addenda need to be included in the bid materials. On the 24th of June, that's the last day for bidders to notify me of their intent to bid, which is very important, so that helps me keep track of who is going to submit bids. All bids are due on the 30th of June by 4:30 in the afternoon Pacific time. I highly recommend that you follow 2 steps in doing your bid, that you get it in well ahead of the 4:30 time frame, as well as when you send it, you also email me or call to let me know it's sent. So then if it gets to a wrong building, then I know to be looking for it.
And Bunny, going back to the 24th, which is the last day for bidders to notify you of their intent to bid, that's something new to this contract. For those of you that have been around the block with us for other contracts, we've never required that. But this year, or for this contract, we are requiring it to help Bunny, like she said, look for the bids that are expected to arrive. That is mutually beneficial to you and to her as well. So that is a requirement.
Yes, it is a requirement. Before I go on to the July calendar, I'm going to provide you with an opportunity to take a snapshot of the June calendar, if you so wish to. Moving on to the July calendar, So as I mentioned, Tuesday, June 30th, the bids are due by 4:30. On Wednesday, we have a public bid opening at 10 in the morning, 1st of July. And then immediately we start with the bid evaluation, which continues through the 9th of July. And then on the 10th of July, the letters of intent to award will be sent out. Following that, we enter into our 5-day protest period, and by the close of business on the 17th, the final letters of award are sent if there are no protests or if all protests have been resolved. So on the 17th, after 5 o'clock, the final letters of award are sent. Following that, we have mandatory meetings to cover the post awards, and this is on July 21st and 22nd. You need to attend one of those meetings. The 21st is an afternoon meeting starting at 1 o'clock, and the 22nd is a morning meeting starting at 10 in the morning till noon. So I advise you to mark your calendars now to reserve that time frame and block it, because again, it is a mandatory meeting. We discuss all post-award documents that are due in those meetings, and then those documents are due to me on the 28th of July. This allows me a little bit of time to get all the information on the website. And before I go on to the month of August, I'm going to provide you with an opportunity to take a snapshot of this screen as well. Okay, and after all of the information is received, our target date to launch is to start on Monday, August 3rd for this contract to launch. So that's a lot of information that's covered on our timeline, again on page 4 of the invitation to bid. Next, I'm going to cover some highlights from the invitation to bid. And again, just to emphasize that these are only highlights that we're covering in the invitation to bid. It's very crucial that you are familiar with the invitation to bid, the contract, and the bid forms, and all the documents that are associated with this invitation to bid. With your invitation to bid, if you can turn to page 10 if you have it, or you can pull it up online to look at page 10, the scope of work. In this scope of work, we outline our 2 goals for this invitation to bid. And these 2 goals, let me pull it up here for you as well. So our 2 goals as outlined we strive to achieve is to provide design, installation, and support of integration school safety solutions to eligible purchasers through a competitively bid contract. Our second goal is to increase the efficiency of the procurement process for eligible purchasers by providing them a list of vendors who have been awarded convenience contracts for their custom portfolios through a competitive bid process, thereby reducing the need for purchasers to go to several companies to make their purchases and contract for installation and integration services. So these are the 2 goals that we strive to achieve with this invitation to bid. The second section is highlighting our portfolio catalog categories, and these categories portfolio catalog categories are listed here in section 1.0. They include, and they are also duplicated, these are what's on your bid forms. The first one, video surveillance solution, includes all equipment and cabling that will provide the purchaser with the ability to engage in video surveillance of their property. Access control solutions, this includes all equipment and related parts that will provide the purchaser with the ability to manage the locking and unlocking of doors to the building. 1.3 outlines the communication systems, which includes all equipment, related parts and accessories for voice, bell control, paging products, and emergency notification systems. 1.4, the Safety Solutions Services includes the design, integration, installation, and support of the items described in paragraphs 1.3 in this section as well. And when we get into the bid forms, these categories are the tabs that are listed on your bid forms, and we will cover those in depth later on in the broadcast. The eligible bidders, oops, sorry, just went past what I wanted. So again, that was the portfolio for categories. Our eligible bidders, as outlined in the scope of work, the eligible bidders shall meet the requirements listed in Appendix A for the bidders checklist for eligibility. And our contract period listed on page 11, section 3.0, the terms of the contract shall be from the date that is on the final letter of award to December 31st, 2016, with the option to extend the contract in 3, 6, 12-month increments or end it if it no longer meets the requirements and achieves the goals that we have established in the invitation to bid. On section instructions for bidding, beginning on page 12, again, if you have the invitation to bid, I'll give you a moment to turn to that. The instructions to bid addresses the gathering and preparing of bid documents that are required for this invitation to bid. And on our website, bear with me just one moment. On our DigitalEdge website, at the top banner, under for vendors, and I'm sure a lot of you have already gone to this, but under the for vendors screen and invitation to bid 15B, all the information regarding what you need for your documents and your materials for this invitation to bid to be submitted are listed here, as well as farther down on the page we will have any addendas and the questions from today's broadcast. So this is a very important page to cover. For the instructions for bidding, continuing on page 12, the first section that you need to submit that's addressed here in section 1.1, the appendices. These are located on page 25 of the invitation to bid, starting with Appendix A, the checklist for eligibility. The information that is addressed here, you need to provide proof or evidence that you are an eligible bidder.
Can we stay on that for a second? Yeah. So in the left column, you'll see the criteria. And in the middle column, you do need to place a check mark there if you meet that criteria. And on the right, in the right column, it shares what kind of evidence we're looking for that you must submit in order to provide proof of eligibility. So we hope that's helpful, and this has to be notarized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as indicated on the bottom of these forms, several of these forms do need to be signed and notarized. So please pay attention to that as you submit the forms. Appendix B is the statement of your bidder's statement of assurance that has very important questions listed on here that will assure that you are licensed and bonded. And again, this is a document that needs to be signed and notarized. Appendix C is your bidder's non-collusion form. And again, this is information that needs to be completed and notarized. And Appendix D is the bidder's offer and acceptance form. And it's noted in the invitation to bid that when you submit this, you need to submit 2 signed offer and acceptance forms, because at the end of the process, if you are to receive an award, then when the award letters go out, you will receive a signed original back from us with our superintendent's signature on it. And just to interject, please don't insert a date here in this section. This is for the effective date following the bid process and the evaluation. And once we have gone through everything, that will be submitted with a date on it back to you. And Appendix E gives an overview of the mandatory insurance requirements that are referred to in Appendix A that must be submitted, that you are an eligible bidder, that you can meet these insurance requirements as well.
Was there an Appendix F?
Yes, there is.
It's really not anything that they have
No.
to submit. Right.
No. Appendix F covers when Debbie goes through the bid forms. Appendix F, gives you an overview of how to duplicate your bid forms. So it gives you an Excel overview of duplicating bid forms. The addenda that is addressed, and I'm going to pull up the invitation to bid, so just bear with me a moment here. Make it easier for those of you that don't have the invitation to bid out. I'm here on section 1.3, where all addenda that is posted to the DigitalEdge website that I showed you a moment ago, you will need to sign the addenda page and include it with your instructions for submitting a bid within the notebook. And we will cover that in depth later on here. The evidence of responsibility as listed in the instructions for bidding, you are to provide 3 letters of recommendation from previous customers that can attest to your company's quality of performance, service, support, etc. You're also to provide evidence of the capacity of your company's sales staff to provide personal assistance and assist our purchasers when making their purchases. You're also to provide evidence of the capacity of your company's reporting staff for reporting price changes, sales reports, and all the post-award information that is required should you be awarded. 1.44 discusses the sample project proposal, that you are to provide a sample proposal that your company would provide to a purchaser, that describes the scope of work and includes any exclusions. 1.45 is your evidence of the ability to provide the contract website, and on a single page you are to write a narrative that demonstrates your company's ability to provide a web page that shares information about your awarded portfolio through the DigitalEdge program. And the following sections, after we have our question and answer period, Debbie is going to cover the bid forms in depth as we go through that section. But for now, sorry, you have to bear with me a moment while I get back to our screen that I want. But for now, we are going to take questions that you may have regarding the timeline, the scope of work, and the instructions for bidding through section 1.0 that I have covered so far. Please ask your questions in the question window. And as Debbie stated earlier, please refer to the page number in the invitation to bid or the document that you have questions about. The first question that was submitted was if we were taking roll of any kind. And yes, at the very beginning of the broadcast, we stated that we would be keeping track of who has attended, as this is one of the important criteria in order to be able to submit a bid. You have to have attended this.
And somebody from your company must have attended the entire webinar.
So please feel free to put in any questions. It's a good time to have the opportunity to ask your questions. And as I stated before, all questions are posted on the DigitalEdge website for all to view. You know, Debbie and I worked long and hard on this invitation to bid, so we hope that it is a very easy bid to follow through with what we are requesting. And we hope by the end of this broadcast you have a good feel for what we expect to be submitted in the proposals.
So we have a question: is a certified professional EE okay as a substitute requirement for an RCDD on staff?
We will end up doing some research on that in order to answer that. And so the answer to that question will be posted on the website. You will notice that in the information we have the other certification for the certified channel partner certification, and that is also a requirement in addition to the RCDD.
We have a comment from one of the viewers that says, "Looks great and straightforward, thanks." And we're glad that that's how it looks to you and feels to you. And it may be a factor in why questions are coming in slowly. But we have a few more questions. No questions from me yet. Seems pretty clear so far. Okay, there's one. And another question is, with what company must the bidder be a certified channel partner?
So as we go through the bid forms, there is a Form D, and on that form, when Debbie covers that, that is going to be a location where you are going to list who on your staff is a certified channel partner. No, excuse me, I'm sorry. That's just for licensing.
Yeah.
But the bidder's Appendix A is where you prove that you provide the eligibility, that you that a certified channel partner is on staff.
No, the company is a certified channel partner.
Mm-hmm. So the question is, with what company must the bidder be a certified channel partner? The company that is submitting the bid is to be a certified channel partner and have that certification.
must you simply be a certified channel partner of the manufacturers you're proposing. And we're going to tentatively say yes to that, but we reserve the right to confirm that response on the website. So please watch the website afterwards.
The question, will we be publishing a list of who attended this conference? The answer is no, we do not publish a list of who attended this conference, but we do keep track of it ourselves, as I said, because it's a very important part to be able to submit a bid.
Okay, we'll give about 30 more seconds for any more questions to be submitted, and then we'll, I think, take a break for 10 minutes. We have a question. What was last year's volume of sales from this contract? This is a brand new contract. We don't have any history. This is the first time we're publishing this invitation to bid for these solutions. That's a great question, and maybe a year from now we'll have some data for you.
One thing to point out, though, if you're not familiar with DigitalEdge, DigitalEdge is in 12 states. And if you're not familiar with DigitalEdge, I would really advise you to look through our website to help become familiar. It's not just in the state of Washington where ESD 112 is located. Our purchasing program is in 12 states. And that's why it's pertinent on the bid forms to indicate which states you are licensed in and you're submitting your bid for.
It's such a great question, though, and I think at the heart of that question is that this bidder, probably like all bidders, is trying to establish what is the need out there for this solution, and you, the participants, as well as Bunny and I, and the educational institution that we work in here, are all aware of the need for school safety solutions in this day and age. With all of the catastrophic activities in the schools that we hear about in the media. Some states are providing grants for the design and or the installation and or just the equipment for school safety solutions. And so in that context, many schools our mission here at ESD 112 is to provide equity to school districts. And so what we do is we take on the burden of preparing and publishing invitation to bids and awarding what we call convenience contracts on behalf of the bidder, on behalf of the eligible purchasers. So there are contracts already in place that they can piggyback on for when they are ready and decide to make the move and install a school safety solution on their property or premises or entire campus or campuses. So we all know there is a need. This particular contract does not guarantee any sales to you. We don't guarantee that you will, get business out there. You still have the same kind of work that you've already have to do to get contracts with the districts, but all we're doing is opening the door for districts and for other eligible purchasers by establishing a contract with awarded vendors who can provide design, installation, and support of integrated school safety solutions. So again, that question about what was last year's volume of sales is such a great question. Unfortunately, we don't have any history with this particular contract yet. Okay, no more questions have come in, Bunny. Why don't we take a 10-minute break? Let's see, what time does your phone say, Bun?
Our time is 9:38.
Why don't we all use our cell phones to kind of sync up our times, and let's come back at 9:50 for the next leg of this broadcast.
Okay, so we will see you back here at 9:50 for the important bid form coverage.
Okay, we hope you had a nice break and had a chance to make those emergency phone calls and put out all those fires you put out in your daily routine. Bunny has just covered much information, preliminary information about the contract and all of that. And so, or not the contract, but the invitation to bid. And this next segment of the broadcast is all about actually demonstrating the logistics of using the bid forms and how to self-evaluate your own bids that you're going to submit, how to submit the bid materials, and we're going to talk a little bit about the bid evaluation. Before I start in on the materials, though, I wanted to just remind you and really actually even emphasize that bidders who bid in response to this invitation to bid are submitting a portfolio for a bid. And that portfolio in its entirety, in its totality, is your bid. So when you use your bid forms in the Excel format that we've provided, you'll submit one set of bid forms, just one and only one set of bid forms, but you'll complete as many tabs or as many worksheets in that Excel workbook as you can, and that's your bid for your safety solutions portfolio. When we evaluate your bids and award the bids, we will be awarding probably more than one bid, because we'll be comparing bids that are identical in nature, identical in services, identical in manufacturers of the products that you provide in your safety solution. And we'll talk more about what constitutes an identical bid a little bit later. But I wanted to just prepare you for the fact that this is a convenience contract, and with these convenience contracts, we make multiple awards. We want you to be comfortable with that. There is a competitive element of this, both in this bid process and then after awards are made as well. So let's go ahead and get started with the demonstration of the bid forms. And Bunny has already talked a little bit about how to use the appendices. Did I go by it? Let's see here.
Oh, it's on the website.
That's okay. This is what I want. She's already talked a little bit about how to use the appendices to guide you into determining whether you're eligible. And section 1.0 and all of the subsections on page 12 tell you what materials to gather and how to prepare them. So if you'll just go to page 12 of your instructions for of your invitation to bid, and that page is called Instructions for Bidding. And if you just go down that page, paragraph by paragraph and subparagraph by subparagraph, you will know what you have to gather and prepare to submit for your bids. I have to laugh because I used to be a first grade teacher, and boy, can I break things down to the minute details. So yeah, section 1.0 on page 12 is all about the extra materials that we require to demonstrate evidence that you're certified, you're an eligible bidder, you're a responsible bidder, and all that. Now we're coming down to where the rubber meets the road, and that's filling out your bid forms. So the bid form is on the website that Bunny showed you earlier, and it's downloadable as a Microsoft Excel file. And I have it on my screen, and this particular Microsoft file has many different tabs. Down at the bottom you see 4 blue tabs. Those are tabs that provide us information about your company as a bidding company. So the 4 blue tabs start out with Form A, and you can see here that I have filled out a sample bid form, Form A, on the screen for Hansen's Safety Solution. That's the bidder's company. That's a make-believe company. And I have just, clicked in every single cell and typed in the information that's requested. If I come on down further on Form A, here there's a section that says, please place an X in column B by all of the states that you're offering to provide school safety solutions in. Here are the 12 states that we're bidding on behalf of. You might be licensed in all of those states, and you might want to perform work in all of those states. Or you may be licensed in all of those states, but you want to perform work in just some of those states. Or you might be licensed in only some of those states and are restricted to some of those states. In any case, please place an X in the column, in this column, by the states that you wish to perform services, school safety services and equipment and software in response to this bid. And then this middle section, if you become licensed in additional states in the future, would you like to add those states to the list of states you're checked at the left? And you either need to say yes or no. But if you say no, and you become licensed in the future in another state, you will not be able to add that state to this bid or to this contract. So just think through that. I don't know why somebody would put no there, but there might be a reason. This final bid score will be hand calculated, and it comes from the scores on the actual bid forms. And I'll show you where those bid form scores are, but we'll be using this space right here to calculate and add all of the bid scores from your pricing offers. Okay, and I'll show you how that works in a minute. Down here further on Form A, you see 2 more questions that you might want to consider answering. Do you wish to have the flexibility to add other school safety solutions for video surveillance, access control, and communications to the contract that emerge in the future? So in other words, as we know in the technology field, there are solutions coming out of the woodwork every day, and you may not know what they are now. You may not be a partner for those manufacturers right now, but maybe a year from now you will be. So if you want to have the flexibility of adding more manufacturers' solutions in the future, make sure you put yes. Okay? And then if your response to question number 1 is yes, you will need to type in the % of price adjustment that you're guaranteeing that you'll apply to the solution in that manufacturer's product line. And we understand that there's no way that you will know, what price adjustment you'll be able to offer in the future. So be conservative. That's okay if you're conservative there, but put something there. If you use the discount method, please use a negative number to indicate a discount. If you use markup over cost, please just put in a normal number, a positive number. Whatever method of bidding you use, though, whether it's discount or markup, it must be consistent on all of these bid forms in this Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. So as soon as you start using the discount method on Form A, then everything in all of your forms must be the discount method. And same holds true with the other method called markup over cost. Okay, so Form A is pretty basic. In the same manner, we're asking you to fill out Form B, which is your information about who your inside contacts are. And these are the people who will be working with Bunny after the awards are made. She needs a lot of information from a lot of different people in your company, and she needs to know who to call and or contact or email for different reasons. So as you can see, I filled out 1 line. Joe Jones is the key contact for Hansen's Safety Solutions. Here's his email address, phone number, and cell phone number, and he is one of the key contacts. There might be another key contact too. But we do need contact information for your marketing person, your salesperson, who's going to be the person she contacts for the administrative fee, and any other contacts that you want her to have access to. All right? There's a little color code legend at the bottom. Moving across the bottom, I'm going to click on Form C now to bring that up. And here I have filled out a portion of this, but that you probably have more information than just 2 lines to fill in here. This particular form gives us information to who's on your sales force. We want to know that you have people, feet on the street, to help people in the different states or the different regions that you serve. So if you've got Arlo Peterson in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, and he's the sales force for those 3 states, then identify the states that he serves, put his name in here, put his phone number, his fax number, and his email address. But every state that you mark on Form A, right here, for the states that you want to offer to work in your bid, needs to be represented on Form C.
Debbie, can I interject something
Absolutely.
here?
Yep.
This information that you provide on here is duplicated onto the website following the award, so that when a purchaser looks on the DigitalEdge website and refers to the ordering instructions for you as a vendor, all this information for every state is provided for all the sales representatives that you have for those states that you are awarded. So it's very important to have this here. It will assist later on with our purchasers trying to contact your company.
Oh, it's good information. Thanks, Bunny. Okay, and then again going across the bottom, the next form is Form D, Workforce Licensing. And we want to know about your company and the licensing by state, the licenses and certifications that you hold by state. So it's not just licensing, but it is certifications. And let's see, I had some notes here. So Bunny, you might have to help me out with this one. We definitely need to know in Alaska, if you have a business license in Alaska and you're bidding in Alaska, is that a business license? Yes, then you would mark, you'd put business, and that would be a company license, obviously. And if there's a web page with business license requirements for the state of Alaska, we require for you to put that web page URL in there. Another kind of license is your POE license. And what level? 6. And is that a license held by, that's by employees, right?
Yes.
So you would want to put an X under employees, and if you subcontract out, you would want to put an X there. You need to know, we need to know how, we need to get a picture of how you work and who's certified and who's licensed. Mm-hmm. Electrical licenses, maybe some administrators, maybe some employees, and maybe some of your subcontractors. And again, give us the webpage URL with the requirement. Bunny, we need to also, I think you mentioned earlier before the broadcast started, that we also need the certification for their RCDD.
Mm-hmm. And for their certified channel partner.
Right. So,
and that is also there. But one thing to interject on the electrical license, if you can list that also by level from 01 to 06, and if that is something that you have members on your staff that have those licenses, or if that's something that you get through the subcontractors, just be sure to complete this chart by state. And Debbie mentioned before the web page. It's going to be very helpful for us to refer back to by state as you provide the URL for the web page that shows the requirements by state for the different licensing levels. And this form, as you scroll through it, lists all 12 states for DigitalEdge.
Yes.
So please put your pertinent information within the section for the states you are submitting a bid on.
And you'll find the name of the states in the yellow stripes. They're in alphabetical order. Okay, so those first 4 worksheets just provide us information about you, your company, and your employees. And now here's where you start making your offers. On the first non-blue tab at the bottom, this particular tab was green, and it's called Video Surveillance Solutions. You start by putting your company name up here at the top, and you can see that I have already filled this out a little bit, and I'm going to just increase the zoom on this a little bit, maybe not that much. Let me just quickly reduce that so that we can see clearly. Okay. So the specs for the video surveillance solutions, and this is the, surveillance cameras, the video management hardware, and the software. The specs and the requirements are up here in row 4. So make sure that you read those specs. And then everything that you want to offer in your bid, in terms of surveillance cameras, video management hardware, software, you list down here, and you can see that in the first column of the worksheet, you put down the manufacturer and the model number, and then in the second column, you identify the product name and just provide a really quick short description. This is not all of what we need to know about this each of your solutions, but it just gives us a starter, some starting information about it. And keep in mind that later on, I'll talk about this, we require specification sheets for everything that you're bidding on these worksheets, okay? And then you put in the baseline amount for applying the price adjustment. In other words, what would your baseline price be if you weren't bidding this, if you just, offered this equipment to a general customer? And as you mouse over some of these cells with a little red triangle up there, you'll see some comments appear. So feel free to use that information. What I put in here is 595. It's just a fictitious number. And the percent of price adjustment I used was a 35% discount to this amount here. And remember, again, the discount, the method of price adjustment has to be consistent throughout all of the forms now on the bid. So since on Form A I used a discount price adjustment method, then that's what I have to use in all these bid forms. Okay, so $5.95 is the normal price, and you can use whatever price list you want. You can use educational pricing, you can use MSRP, whatever. But at the end of the day, whatever baseline price you use here, you apply your price adjustment here, and the form will calculate the final bid price for you. You'll notice you cannot click in the column called final bid price because it's going to calculate the price adjustment on your baseline pricing. We do want to know what your normal education price is. So you do have to put that there, and then we want to know if you can provide evidence that this product's bid price is lower than normal educational pricing. You must, bottom line is you have to be able to prove that because that's a requirement of this bid. So let me just take you through one of the, how I would fill this out. Let's say that there's a piece of a software called by the Balt Company, and the product number is VMSW-09, and the name of the product is, sorry about that, Hawkeye software. And just a few key specs. It's got search capabilities, and it's got a digital zoom. This is the software. The baseline price for that, again, I'm just pulling a number out of the air, $3,477, and I'm going to apply a 12% discount to that baseline pricing. And as you can see, then the final bid price was calculated already for me. What's the normal bid price? Or I'm sorry, what's the normal education price for this? Well, the normal education price would be $3,200 in this fictitious scenario. And yes, I can provide evidence that the bid price is lower than the normal education price. Now earlier on Form A, I shared with you that we're going to calculate the bid score by adding up all of the scores on the individual bid sheets. So far, this bid sheet, if you have in front of you, or if you just want to look at mine, up here in the top right corner, the score on this bid sheet is 4838.51. And it looks like a dollar amount, and yeah, it is. And it comes from adding up the final bid prices of these solutions in your portfolio. Okay? Now, when Bunny and I do evaluations of these bids, we're going to put all of the bids side by side. And we're going to say, okay, are there any two bidders that bid on the Troyer CAM 300, the Simpson NH450, the Trosper 988-0997, and the Balt VMSW-09? Okay, and if so, if that's the totality of what's on your sheet here in your bid, and there's another bidder that has exactly the same pricing on this sheet, then your bids might be competitive, and we'll take note of it. But they only might be competitive. At that point, we have only looked at this particular form where you make offers on your video surveillance solutions. You might have identical bids here with another bidder, but on the access control solutions, you might offer different solutions than that same bidder, your competitor. The bottom line here is that if two bidders submit exactly the same solutions in totality on all four of these tabs down here at the bottom, the green, the purple, the orange, and the pink, and the yellow tab. Again, the green, purple, orange, and yellow. If we look at two bids and the offers are on the exact same products by the exact same manufacturers in those two bids, then we'll consider those two bids identical and therefore competitive. And at that point, then we will have to look at bid scores. And so we'll have to add up the bid scores that we see on this form and on the access control form and on the communications form. And I think those are the three forms. We'll add those three numbers up and we'll put the total, we'll write the total right here on the final bid score box on Form A. And that's how we'll know who the lowest bidder is between those two competitive bids. So now you can draw your own conclusions. There might be a great a great chance, there might be a large chance that two bidders will bid on the same solutions, or there may not be. We don't know your industry enough, so to determine whether that's a strong possibility or not. And that's all we're going to say about that. But coming back to this form, you can list as many surveillance cameras as you wish. You can list as many video management hardware solutions as you wish, and you can list as many software solutions as you wish to make sure that you provide a whole suite of options to the purchasers who need different options to choose from. Okay, so I showed you how to fill out this form. This form is exactly the same. You start out by naming your company, and then again the specs and description and requirement of what we're looking for access control solutions are up here in row 4, and you just start listing your solutions, starting with the manufacturer, the product name, and then identify your baseline for your price adjustment. This form is just like the previous form I showed you. It behaves in exactly the same way. Same with your communication systems bid form. All right, you can read up here what we're looking for and then bid accordingly down here. The fourth form is School Safety Solutions Services. And for this form, there's no score. This is kind of an informational form. We need to know the answers to these questions. Question number 1 over here in row 5 is in this large space under row 5 is what services do you offer to purchasers at no cost? Please list them in the right, in the middle column, and use the right column to add pertinent information. So you can see I just, again, created a fictitious scenario. I don't even know if it's realistic, but the initial consultation might be free, a first walkthrough might be free, but maybe you'll have to charge them for each additional walkthrough after the first day. So we just need to know, what services do you offer at no cost? Question number 2, what other services do you offer to purchasers that are priced according to a fee schedule or price sheet? And then what discounts or markups, this question should say, what price adjustment from normal educational pricing would you offer on these services? Okay, so that's an error on our part right here where it says what discount from normal educational pricing. That should say what price adjustment are you offering. Remember to use negative numbers for discounts, positive numbers for markup over cost. Okay, and please note that we require that you submit the fee schedule that you're basing these price adjustments on. Okay. Coming on down here, question number 3, do you guarantee to your purchasers that your company will comply with local prevailing wage standards? Use the middle and right columns to respond. And again, in this fictitious scenario, I put in the word yes as my response, and some additional information is this is a standard practice for our company. We include language on our contract that addresses this. And again, you might have other additional pertinent information. And question number 4, is there anything else you want us to know about how you price your labor and services? Excuse me, just a second. Bear with me for just a second. I have allergies and I'm contending with a cough. I'll be right back with you. Okay, I'm back, and I do so apologize for that delay. I'm going to try to go on with more information, and Bunny is bringing me a cough drop. Hey, Bunny, could you get me some more water, too? Yeah, over here. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thanks. Okay, I wanted to come back to the pricing that you offer. Your final, for whatever price adjustment you apply to your baseline amount, it's going to produce a final bid price. And your final bid price needs to include certain items or certain costs that you'll find on page 13 of the invitation to bid in section 2.9. And you'll notice that your bid price needs to include a 1.5 administrative fee paid to the DigitalEdge. After awards are made, we'll share how that's done. But a 1.5 administrative fee for all sales and services realized or generated under or as a consequence of the DigitalEdge contract, including parts, labor, and associated project costs listed in the final quote to the purchasers. And then, thank you, Bunny. And there are other costs that you need to consider that are also listed on page 14 in some of the sub-paragraphs of 2.9. So make sure you read over that to make sure that your final bid price is including everything that you'll be responsible for considering. Okay, before I move back to the PowerPoint, can you think of anything else we need to add about using the bid forms, Bunny?
No, I can't. The only thing that I would like to stress is that back on Form A, to allow for the most flexibility with this bid, it's very important to review those questions that are asked at the bottom regarding licensing in other states, as well as if you would be interested in providing a percentage to add other school safety solutions for those categories going forward for new products. We want this contract to have longevity and to be flexible, and those two questions on Form A will help provide that.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So far we talked a little bit about how to gather and prepare your bid documents, which is covered in section 1.0 and all the subsections on page 12. And then how to use the bid forms, which is covered in section 2.0 on pages 13 and 14. And now we want to do something that we haven't done in the past. We want to help you do your own self-evaluation on the use of the bid forms. And this is covered, this is suggested in paragraph 3.0 on page 14, and we provide you access to the same evaluation forms that we're going to use in the final evaluation of your bid. And let me just turn our attention to that. Okay. On the website is the evaluation tool that we'll be using, and we're going to be checking two things. We're going to be checking, are you a responsive bidder? And a responsive bidder is a bidder, as defined in Washington and probably many other states too, a bidder that has bid in a way that meets all of the material requirements of our invitation to bid. You followed directions, you've provided us with the information that we need, you've used the correct bid forms. It's kind of about logistics. And this is simply a checklist. And so after you gathered all of your materials and you've put them in order, you can use this checklist and go through it and say and mark, did you do this or not? Did you attend the mandatory bidders conference? Did you notify the DigitalEdge project coordinator by June 24th? Yes or no? And many of these requirements need to be submitted in PDF format on the CD. And you'll see that column is the very right-hand column. In this first case, there's no way for you to submit anything on the CD that demonstrates that you attended the conference, today's conference, or let Bunny know about that you're going to submit a bid. But just circle yes or no. And then another material requirement. Did the bid arrive to ESD 112 by the deadline? You're not going to know that, but you're going to assume yes, because you're going to mail it in plenty of time to arrive by the deadline. And we're going to also circle, did it arrive in a sealed state? Okay. And then in just a second, we're going to talk about your binder assembly, but you can use this checklist to, again, go through and make sure that all of the appendices have been submitted correctly as per the instructions in the invitation to bid. All addenda have been submitted correctly. The evidence of bidder eligibility is included and signed. Anyway, all of these items are required in the binder. So as you put your binder together, and we're going to talk about the binder in just a second, make sure that they're all there. And then use of the bid forms. You're going to check these things in this section of the evaluation tool and just type yes or no or circle yes or no. And if the answer is no, then go back and fix it. Because we don't want to reject any bids based on receiving bids from a non-responsive bidder. That's a very poor reason to reject a bid. But we, as our bid states, we reserve the right to reject bids based on a non-responsive bidder because we feel like your ability to follow instructions is an indication of how well the partnership will work in the future. So it's really important to us that we do everything we can to help you understand how important it is to be responsive. So use that form to your advantage. Then continuing on down to the next page, this second form is a little different than the first form. The first form on the first page is simply a checklist. It's a yes or no checklist. On the second form, though, we use more of a qualitative review of the materials. And you can see that we will be reading these things, the materials that you provide in response to the requirements. And we will be, you can see what the maximum points allowed are for that requirement. And we'll either give you full points if you've given us everything we need, or if you've given us a partial subset of what we need, or if we need to follow up with phone clarification, then we won't be able to give you full points. We will give partial points. Okay? So again, do everything you can to get the full points for each of these requirements, because at the bottom in the lavender row here, it says you must achieve a score of 45 out of these 50 points. That's 90%. So you must achieve 90% of the possible 50 points to be able to go on to the next phase of the bids where we look at your bid forms. Okay? So this is out there for you to use. Notice that this very final column says the bidder is not able to or chooses not to provide this requirement. And so if that's the case, you will be disqualified and no further evaluation of your bids will take place. And we put that there not to scare you or threaten you, but just because only because we want to give you every chance to be a successful bidder. And we want you to know where kind of our line of demarc is. If you don't provide it to us, it'll be a matter of disqualification and you'll receive a letter of rejection. So we don't like doing that, so yeah. All right. Enough said about that. Use these evaluation tools to your advantage. That's what they're there for.
Can I interject one thing?
Yes, please.
On the first form for the responsive bidder, you'll notice that the far right column on that form refers to including a CD or a jump drive. And where it is marked on there, you are to include those documentation on a CD or a jump drive and include that in your binder, which I'm sure we'll highlight that again later on, but I wanted to make sure that you use this checkpoint for making sure you have those CDs or jump drives.
Yep. Great. Thank you. All right. I know I'm covering a lot of information before we take questions, but I'm going to keep going for just a second because we're getting close to being done here. So we've covered how to use the evaluation tool to your benefit or to your advantage to pre-evaluate your bid materials before you submit them. Then we're going to I'm going to cover just a little bit about how we need your bid material submitted. It's very, very specific, and we do require the bid materials in these submitted in this way. If you'll turn to page 15 of your invitation to bid, that is where it tells you how to submit your bid materials. Earlier on page 13, it told you what to gather. On page 12 and 13, it told you what to gather, but, oops, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. I don't even know what and now on page 15, we're gonna tell you how to package this up together. So you will need to put together a binder, and the binder has very specific requirements that are spelled out on page 15 of the invitation to bid. We need things, certain documents put behind very specific tabs in your binder, and that's all on page 15. So one thing you'll be submitting is a binder. The next thing that you'll be submitting are 3 envelopes, and those are described on page 16. One envelope will have your bid forms from the Microsoft Excel file. Another envelope will have your price sheets that you use as your baseline pricing that your price adjustments were applied to. And the third envelope will include your specification sheets for the products that you're making offers on. Okay? Okay, so you'll be submitting a binder, you'll be submitting 3 envelopes, and you'll be submitting a CD or a jump drive that includes all of the required materials listed on pages 15 and 16. If you read through those requirements on page 15 and 16, it will remind you to put the materials on the CD or jump drive in a specific format. I want to stop here and say, do not send us your bid form in PDF format. We need your bid forms in Excel format. Most everything else is in PDF, that's fine. But your bid form, where you make your offers, must be submitted in Microsoft Excel format. Okay? Okay, so 3 things. Your binder, your 3 envelopes, and your CD or jump drive. You're going to package those all up together. You're going to put them in a box. And you're going to seal that box. And then you're going to address that box as per the instructions on page 3 of the invitation to bid. And that tells you exactly how to label the box. You'll only be shipping 1 box. That box is your bid. It's a single bid in totality that we'll review and award if you're the lowest bidder in a competitive case. If you're not, if there's not a competitive bid against yours, then it will be awarded if you meet all of the other material requirements. We're going to talk a little bit more about the evaluation of your bids now. Bunny and I will go through 3 steps in the evaluation process. 1, Here we say 3 steps and then we have 4 items. Okay. Anyway, here are the steps of the evaluation process. We'll conduct the initial screening as described on page 17. And again, I'm not going to go through everything we do in that initial screening, but we will check to make sure you're eligible to bid, that you're a responsive bidder, and you're a responsible bidder. Okay, that's all described in section 1.0. And then we'll examine the bid forms and the price sheets and the spec sheets as described on page 18 in section 2.0. And okay, let's see here. We'll examine the bid forms, the price sheets, and the spec sheets. And going on in the invitation to bid, on page 18, section 2.1, it describes what non-competitive bids are. And your bid will be non-competitive with anybody else's bid. Again, if it's not exactly like anybody else's in terms of what you're offering for on the last 4 bid forms. Okay. If there are 2 bidders that are offering exactly the same solutions, as described in section 2.2 on page 18, then we will look at what they're offering, and we'll look at the score, and we'll award to the bidder with the lowest score on Form A. Okay? Mm-hmm. All right. So I've covered how to submit your bids now and how we'll evaluate the bids. And then in Bunny's timeline that she shared with you, she shared that once we've evaluated the bids and identified the lowest bidders for each portfolio, then she will send the letter of intent to award, and then the timeline kicks back in again. So, okay. So that was a lot of information to throw at them. Bunny, thank you for rescuing me with my water and my throat lozenges.
You are welcome.
Let's see if there are any questions out there. There probably are. Bear with us for just a second. We're getting ready to look at the questions. One question says, how strict will the must be manufactured in the USA requirement be for the video surveillance cameras? This will most likely limit your contract to a single manufacturer. Most leading cameras are made in Asia. And we recognize that. We did that because there are many grants out there, both state and federal grants, and even some private grants that require that the equipment is made in the USA. So we want to honor that. Now, I am going to reserve the right to consider the significance of that question and confirm our final response on the website, because it's a really great question, and all bidders just need to be aware of the fact that if there's a grant out there that requires equipment to be manufactured in the USA and you're not offering that on your bid, then you won't be eligible to perhaps participate and provide solutions for that grant. So let me put that answer on hold. Great question. Thank you for asking it, and we'll follow up. Make sure you check the website for the final answer there. Can you explain again what you mean by web page URL with requirement on the bid forms? Form D licensing, yes. For example, for an electrical license, do you want a URL from the state that shows the requirement for the license? Mm-hmm. Yes, that's exactly. Thank you. You interpreted that exactly right. We do need a URL that from each state that shows the requirements for that license. Thank you. Another question that's asked is this: if I want to respond to all states and use subcontract integrators, do I list all of their licenses, sales people, etc. on the section for that state? Bunny, that's yours to answer.
Okay. On that section in Form D, I believe it is, on the bid form, where you list on the left-hand side within the respective state, then you list if it's a license that's held by a subcontractor, you have the information there where you can mark it as a subcontractor or a contractor. And that's where you would mark it. So then if, for instance, in the state of Oregon, you don't have anybody within your company or an administrator within your company that has that, or an employee within that license that has that license that is required, and you're going to go through a subcontractor for that licensing in order to have the required licensing for the state. That is where you indicate it on Form D for us, where you are going to make sure you have the proper licensing as required by each state. And that form, again, is one of the last blue tab that is on your bid form.
Great question.
Yeah, great question.
We're waiting for more questions to come in. We want to make sure we give you every opportunity to ask questions or address concerns that you may have.
And while we're waiting, I know I probably sound like a broken record from just highlighting these 2 points, but be sure to review all components of this comprehensive contract, including the invitation to bid and the bid forms, obviously, and the contract when you are submitting your bid. So you're very familiar with all the requirements.
Did you have another reminder too? You said 2 reminders.
Oh, I'm sorry. I stopped and then I was thinking. Yes, the second reminder is just to, besides making sure that you are familiar, is to be sure to keep submitting all your questions by Friday in writing to my email, thedigitaledge.specialist@esd112.org, and everything will be posted on the website. So then you will have all your questions answered, and you'll hopefully benefit from others being answered as well.
Right, I can appreciate what Bunny just said, because it may not be until you start getting into filling out these forms or compiling all the documents that we have requested that you have a question. So we encourage you to start that process now before Friday, so that you have all your questions answered on Friday. We'll provide about 30 more seconds for any more questions to come in, and then if there are no more questions, we'll go on. Is that connection really tight? Okay. Okay, here's another question. Will you accept proper, quote, Buy America documents for products that have these? Will you accept proper Buy America documents for products that have these? Do you know what that means? Could you explain, could the asker of that question explain that a little bit more? Part of the Buy America agreement that manufacturers in North America have with the U.S. You know, we're not prepared to answer that question right now, but I think what we'll do is we'll investigate that and try to understand the significance of that question. It may even be that we follow up with a phone call to that. We're not sure how that's going to work, but we need to understand the significance of that question so we can answer it, you know, with integrity and thoughtfulness. So please watch the website for the final answer.
Thank you for submitting the question, though. We will definitely do our research.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay, that is the end of our question and answer period. We have just a few more thoughts to share with you, and we'd like to go on. In the DigitalEdge contract, we strive for a mutually beneficial partnership, and we see partnerships happening in three ways. One thing you have to remember is that we are bidding on behalf of the purchasers. We represent the purchasers who need safety and solutions installed in their schools. So the purchasers are the first cornerstone of the partnership that is formed with awarded bidders. The second partner, of course, is the bidders that do receive a contract in response to this invitation to bid. And the third partner is the DigitalEdge office. And what we strive for is a mutually beneficial partnership where the purchasers get good pricing and good work by companies that meet state law and state requirements and pay prevailing wages and all of that good stuff. The purchasers get what they need at really good prices without having to go out and put their own bid out. They can piggyback off of this bid. The awarded bidders benefit because they are awarded contracts that meet the purchaser's needs, and hopefully their names get out there and as awarded bidders, and they get increased sales and increased work. Then the DigitalEdge benefits because, number one, we're meeting our mission of helping the purchasers. Number two, the other way that we have to benefit is that we have to receive those 1.5% admin fees to support the operation here, because there is no grant, there's no federal funding, there's no state funding for us to run this operation. So that's why we require the administrative fees. Here's what happens. When all three of those parties are benefiting, then we have a really nice balance as represented in this graphic, and everyone is getting what they need out of this contract. When one is benefiting at the sacrifice or at the cost of the other two, it throws the whole partnership out of whack, and then we have to step in and say, wait, this isn't working. We need to make sure that we get this back into balance. So what we're trying to convey here is that we strive for a really mutually beneficial partnership with the bidders that we're able to award contracts to. Okay, and we hope that makes sense to you. Okay, and Bunny, this was yours to share, I think?
It is.
Yeah.
So our DigitalEdge app, we're very excited about. We've had this for over a year, and it's a very beneficial tool for you as an awarded bidder when we complete this process. All the information basically that we have on our website is available in the palm of your hand when you're out there speaking with your potential purchasers. So you can download this app if you haven't already through the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. And also, as you have this app on the next tile screen, one of our tiles is for YouTube, and the video recording from this broadcast will be available through YouTube, and it will be available through our app, as well as I'll send it out on Facebook, and it'll also be on our webpage. But this is a great tool to have.
Yeah, you can always have it in your pocket and have the prices with you. If you don't have, if you're having a spontaneous conversation. So the app is free.
Yes, it is free.
Yeah.
It is free, and it does have a lot of good information.
Just going to check the questions one more time. Nope, no more questions have come in. All right, Bunny, I think it's time to close up shop.
Close up shop.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so just to recap, during this webinar, we covered the highlights for the invitation to bid. Again, be sure to review all the documents and get a thorough understanding. Like I stated previously, we are recording this webinar, and it'll be posted on the invitation to bid webpage on the DigitalEdge website, as well as through YouTube. Any questions need to be submitted by Friday, and they will be answered on the website. All addenda will be posted by Monday, so be sure to check back onto our DigitalEdge website for any updates and any information when you are preparing your bid. This is very important. We hope that that this has been very beneficial to you. We like doing this because we feel like it gives a good insight into what we expect when bidders submit their bids. So hopefully it is beneficial to you. And I can't think of anything else that we have left out, but let's look for questions one more time before we close up and see if there's anything additional that came in.
Nope, not at this time. One thing we want to make sure that you do is you become familiar enough with the whole invitation to bid and the contract and all the requirements, and determine whether this invitation to bid is right for your company. It's not right for all companies. It won't work for all companies. So we don't want any surprises either for you or for us after we award bids and then learn that you didn't understand something or we didn't understand something about you. So make sure you really evaluate this invitation to bid to make sure that it's aligned with your company's strategies, goals, and mission, and that you can partner with us to achieve our mutual goals.
Mm-hmm. We're excited to receive any bids that you do submit on Tuesday, June 30th by the
Is that the date? Is that the due date?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a due date. Tuesday, June 30th by 4:30 that afternoon at the latest. And again, be sure to notify me when you have sent your bid. So we hope that you find this to be an invitation to bid that you would like to submit a bid on. And again, the recording will be on, I'll send it out through Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook, as well as the DigitalEdge app.
We want to wish you the very best of luck as you prepare your materials and make your offers. We look forward to getting your bids. Thanks so much for joining our broadcast today. Make sure you get in all your questions by this Friday so that we can post them on the website no later than Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you.